Hi guys, hope you're well, and today is about Omega's best kept secret. My Omega Globemaster is well underrated, well undervalued, and today I want to tell you a few of the pros and cons about this gorgeous little watch. I'm Andrew, and I'm a watch addict. Yeah, so the truth of the matter is, 30 minutes before I bought this watch, I'd never really held a Globemaster, never considered a Globemaster. It just wasn't on my radar. And it was just by pure chance that I was returning a watch that I'd bought that was faulty. And what they had in the window was a Globemaster for the sale at a fantastic price. I think it was about 3,500. I bought the bracelet for about £500 a few weeks later. And if you think about it, this watch is £6,100 retail. So I got a massive savings on an absolutely, maybe not iconic watch, but an absolutely glorious, glorious, beautiful, stunning watch. There's loads of good things about this watch. Maybe not the price, because £6,000 is a lot of money for a watch. But even though it's like a dress casual watch, I don't know what category you would fit it into. Probably more dress. But it's actually 100 meters water resistancy, which is really good. It's a master chronometer, which is again fantastic. The movement is actually an 8900, and that's the exact same movement that is in my that was in my Omega Planet Ocean. So if you imagine how thick the Planet Ocean is and how thin this Globemaster is, I'd like to know what's rattling around the rest of the Planet Ocean, to be honest. It's anti-magnetic to 15,000 Gauss, which is again really good. To put that in perspective, the milligauss from the Rolex is about 1,000 Gauss. It's 60 hours of power reserve, which is really good. Sapphire crystal, which you'd expect. And the dial, believe it or not, they class that as a silver dial. And from time to time, it does look like a silver dial. But more often than not, you would have to say it's a white dial. Now, let's start with a couple of the negatives for this watch. And it's pretty obvious one if you watch my videos. And it's the lack of micro adjustment. But having said that, because it is a butterfly clasp and it tapers down, it's relatively thin. It's almost like it borders on a piece of jewellery, so you don't really need micro adjustment on this watch. So that's not really a big thing for me. I do get used to the comfort. I'll be honest, in the summer, I did put an extra link in there because my hand had swelled with the heat and it was just too baggy. So I put a link back in and I just learnt to wear it a little bit tight. So overall, I've had the perfect fit with this watch, but yeah, lack of micro adjustment. Dare I say, a bit like Rolex's Easy Link, just a pop of a couple of mil here or there would make the world a difference. But again, not the end of the world, and I'm learning to live without micro adjustment as it is. Now, another negative about this watch, and this one's quite a big one for me, it's probably one of the worst ones. If you look at the bracelet, or if you laid it flat on the table, it's actually quite a tight knit, and there isn't any visual gaps between the bracelet until you actually put the watch on. And then right by the lugs, as it tapers down, there's a very clear gap there, and then there isn't another gap until it goes halfway down your wrist, and then there's another gap there. So the gaps between the links are not always even, and it's really petty. But for me as a watch addict, I do notice that a little bit more than I should. Might be a big deal, it might be not, but for me, yeah, it does kind of annoy me a little bit. Another one that you could class as a negative, maybe, is the lugs. They're quite harsh, they're quite sharp to look at, not physically sharp. So yeah, and again, that's just a design cue that you may like and you may not. Again, it's a pretty weak negative, to be honest, but yeah. Now, one of the positives about this watch, I would have to say that it's the all brushed finish. So you'd have to say that it's probably a direct competitor with the Aquaterra, the Rolex Datejust. You'd have to say they're dress watches, but this, with it all brushed, it gives it a more everyday vibe. And I've had this when I've had my Rolex Datejust, and the Datejust looked a bit bruised and battered from the polished bits. This is just as bruised and battered when you take a closer inspection of it, but because of that lack of polish, it does gives it an all-day, everyday vibe, and I think that's a really good thing to have an all-brushed watch. Again, that is totally subjective. Another one is the dial and the markers. I mean, really, really high-end, top-notch, oozes quality. I think is a really, really good thing. I really like the pan pie style. The markers, they're really elegant and they really reflect the light in a really positive manner. Oh la la. Get a load of the loom, guys. The loom is fantastic, out of this world. And again, because it's on that grey silver dial, the loom seems to pop up and really, really stand brightly. Just oozes quality, this watch. It's really, really nice. Now, one of the talking points about this watch is that it's a tungsten bezel. It's like a hardened metal of whatever type, and it's been scratch resistant, age resistant, weather resistant, and it reflects light in quite a subdued manner. So it's not like, again, the Rolex Datejust fluted bezel. It is a fluted bezel, but it's quite a muted fluted bezel. And I think, again, with the all brushed finish, I think they've hit the nail on the head with the mixture of all day, everyday luxury, all sort of compacted into one. So I think that's a really good thing. The Pampai dial, again, I've already mentioned it, but I think it is worth mentioning. It does give a very vintage sort of 50s, 60s vibe. And again, that could be off-putting to some people. But for me, I think that's a really good thing. Now, it doesn't screw in the crown. On a watch like this, probably not a major thing, but what I have noticed with a screw-in crown, when you unscrew it, obviously it pops out a little bit and it makes it easier to wind. That's the only thing that I like about this, that when I do try to wind this watch from time to time, not difficult, but ultimately it's a little bit more difficult than it should be. So a little minor thing, really, minor thing. Now, another one of the things for me is that the wide middle links of the bracelet, again, it's a design cue, won't be for everybody, and it's just a talking point. It's not particularly, it's not that I like it or I don't like it, but yeah, the middle links, sometimes the links maybe universally, if they're the same size across, that's better for some people. For me, I don't particularly notice it. I don't think it's a bad thing or a good thing, but those middle links are quite wide. So I'm mentioning them. I'm still looking at the watch now, thinking whether I like it or not like it. I'm not really sure. But one of the big, big, big things about this watch, I'm going to have to take it off for this. It's just brilliant. So the way the case obviously goes there and then goes into the bracelet, it's exactly the same size as the thickness of the bracelet to start with. And it just oozes class. And the fact that they've thought about it in such detail, that it just mimics, it goes across, and it just gives that real balance of all-round jewellery, and it just an all-in-one part of machinery, all blended into one. It's really quite exciting for some reason. And it's a taper. We all love a taper, don't we? So yeah, it's a subtle one. It's not a massive taper. I think it's about a 20 to a 17.5, but it's a taper and it's super sexy. But I've never noticed this on a watch before, and I think this is one of the most incredible small details that it took me ages to notice on this watch, and it is the fact that it tapers not only that way, but that way. So it starts thick at the top of the watch, and then as you go down, when you get to the clasp, the links are actually thinner in both directions, and that just blows my mind. The engineering, the thought process to actually have it taper in both directions just oozes quality. And I think it's little details like that which make this watch more thoughtful, and clearly it's more expensive than the Planet Ocean, more expensive than the Aquaterra, more expensive than the Seamaster. Definitely not more popular than those watches, but when you start to drill down onto what this watch is, you start to realise why it's a more expensive watch than the other ones. Another thing that's really interesting about this watch is, again, side on from the links, is the fact that when it goes around your wrist, the way the links are shaped, when they bend into each other, it gives room for them to bend into each other and give that pure drape around your wrist, but also it won't nip your hair, it won't nip your skin. So again, really nice design cues that it just oozes class. This is my best watch by a long way. It's actually my most expensive watch by a long way now. But yeah, when I pick up, for example, my Tudor Black Bay red, my Tudor Black Bay 58 in blue, or my Bremont, this stands head and shoulders above them watches. Those are great watches, but for me, this is just a little bit special. And the fact that it was a gift from my parents, I've had it a year in January, it's just awesome. I'm really excited about this watch. So it's a 39mm watch, which for me is a really, really good size that I'm finding. All day, everyday wearability is fantastic. It's got 20mm lugs. It comes down to a 17.5mm taper, which we've mentioned, and it's a minuscule 46mm lug to lug, which is really good. The bracelet does protrude out a little bit from that, but it doesn't detract from the comfort or the look of the watch. and the watch itself is 13mm thick, and it is a slightly domed crystal, so really comfy, really wearable, really sexy. There's not much more I can say about this watch, to be honest, guys. I've found it an absolute joy to wear. I bought it originally on the leather strap. I think it's like a grey blue leather strap. Oh la la. That looks absolutely fantastic. I don't get enough wear out of that because, as I've said in a few videos, I prefer it on the bracelet. But if you're ever going to change out, to have the official Omega leather strap to go on, it is really nice. The clasp is a really cool movement. But overall, this watch, all day, every day. And because I have sold the DJ maybe a couple of months ago now, this has sort of come to the forefront of my collection, and I've appreciated this watch more and more the longer I have it. In hand, in person, on the leather strap, the two-tone version, the blue dial version, they're all fantastic. Really great watch. But I'd like to know what you think about the Globemaster, because it's definitely not for everybody, is it? Anyway, guys, this is me. This is my Globemaster. Over and out. I'll see you in the next one.